She had stood beside him at 100 events just like this one. Same ballroom, same chandelier light catching the same diamonds at her throat. Same smile, practiced, precise, and absolutely hollow. But tonight was different. Tonight, Elena Harrington had asked for a microphone. And in approximately 4 hours, every person in this ballroom, the presidents, the CEOs, the journalists, the socialites, every single one of them would walk out of the Harrington Annual Charity Gala knowing a truth that had been buried for 22 years. Victor Harrington did not build his empire. She did. But we are not starting at the end of this story. We are starting 22 years ago, in a small apartment in Lisbon, Portugal, where a 26-year-old woman named Elena Vasquez is sitting at a second-hand desk at 2 in the morning, surrounded by pages of economic modeling she has rewritten 4 times, because she refuses, absolutely refuses, to let the numbers lie. The apartment smells like her mother's sewing machine oil and strong coffee. The walls are thin. Outside, she can hear the city settling into sleep. Taxis, distant music, neighbors arguing softly in the apartment above. Elena does not hear any of it. She is somewhere inside the problem, turning it over, looking for the crack where the light gets in. This is who Elena Vasquez has always been. Not the woman in the photographs. Not the elegant, gracious, devoted wife the magazines described for 2 decades. This, a woman alone at a desk, doing the work that no one else could see, because the work itself was the only thing that ever made complete sense to her. She grew up in the Mouraria district of Lisbon, a neighborhood of steep cobblestone streets, faded azulejo tiles, and the kind of community that holds itself together through necessity and love in equal measure. Her mother, Dona Lucia, was a seamstress who took in alterations from the wealthier neighborhoods across the city. Her father, Manuel, drove taxis until his knees gave out, and then drove them anyway, because there was no other option, because Elena's university scholarship covered tuition but not everything else, and Manuel Vasquez was not a man who allowed his daughter's future to be somebody else's problem. Elena knew, growing up, exactly what her parents' sacrifices looked like. She had watched her mother's hands, gifted, precise hands, develop calluses and early arthritis from 20 years of fine needlework. She had seen her father wince getting out of cars, and then arrange his face into something neutral before he thought she noticed. She noticed everything. She always had. It was this quality, this relentless, almost uncomfortable attention to what was actually happening beneath the surface of things that made Elena extraordinary at economics and systems design. She could walk into any structure, any model, any business framework, and within minutes identify not just where it was failing but why, and more importantly, what it could become if it were built differently. She graduated at the top of her class, won a graduate research fellowship, published a paper at 24 that her professor called, in a private letter she still keeps, the most elegant solution to a structural inefficiency problem I have seen in 30 years of academic work. She was going places. Everyone who knew her understood this instinctively. What no one could have predicted was that places would eventually mean standing silently beside a man who had taken everything she built and signed his name to it. She met Victor Harrington at a tech investment conference in Lisbon. He was 34, American, and immediately the most magnetic person in any room he entered. The kind of man who made you feel, when he looked at you, that you were the only person he had ever truly seen. He had a startup. He had investors who were growing impatient. He had a pitch that was brilliant on the surface and structurally catastrophic underneath. Elena spotted the problem during his presentation. She almost didn't say anything. She was there as a junior research associate, not a consultant, and she had learned, was still learning, that women in rooms like that one were not always rewarded for knowing more than the men beside them. But the problem was so clear, and the solution was so close. And Elena Vasquez had never once in her life been able to watch something broken and say nothing. She approached him after the session. "Your monetization model has a fundamental flaw," she said, without preamble. "Your international expansion timeline assumes regulatory environments that don't exist in 3 of your target markets. And your algorithm, the core of the whole thing, is structured in a way that will create compounding inefficiencies at scale." Victor Harrington looked at her for a long moment. "Can you fix it?" he asked. "Yes," she said. She didn't ask for a title. She didn't ask for a contract. She told herself later that this was because she was young and trusting and in love with the problem itself, and all of that was true. But the deeper truth, the one she would sit with for 22 years, was this: she trusted him. Something in the way he listened, really listened, leaning forward, asking real questions, treating her ideas like they mattered, made her believe that this was the beginning of something that would belong to both of them. Over the next 18 months, Elena rebuilt everything. The algorithm, the monetization structure, the regulatory navigation framework for 7 international markets, the investor communication strategy, the product roadmap. She worked 16-hour days. She turned down 2 other opportunities. She poured every tool she had, every instinct sharpened by years of study and a lifetime of watching her parents solve impossible problems with limited resources, into a company that was not, technically, hers. When the launch came and the world arrived, and the world did arrive, with cameras and wire services and a cover story in a financial magazine, Victor stepped to the front. Elena stood slightly behind him and to the left. She told herself it was temporary. It was not temporary. The company became an empire. The empire became a legacy. Victor Harrington became a myth, the self-made visionary, the genius entrepreneur, the generous philanthropist whose name was carved into marble across 3 continents. Elena became his wife. Elegant, gracious, devoted. She learned to perform the role with precision. Charity galas, board dinners, magazine profiles where she spoke warmly about Victor's vision and never, not once, in 22 years, mentioned her own. She told herself various things over the years to make the silence bearable. That the marriage itself was the partnership. That her children, they had 2, a son and a daughter, both grown now, were her real legacy. That recognition was a small thing, a vanity, not worth the cost of burning down the life she had built. She might have kept telling herself these things forever. And then she met Amara. 3 months before the gala, Amara Osei walked into a Harrington Technologies internal development meeting. 24 years old, a software engineer from Accra, Ghana, recruited directly out of a graduate program on the strength of an algorithm she had designed independently, in her own time, with her own resources. Elena was attending the meeting in her capacity as a ceremonial board observer. The role Victor had given her years ago, just visible enough to look like inclusion, just powerless enough to change nothing. She watched Victor watch Amara present. She recognized that look. She recognized the way he leaned forward, the specific quality of his attention, the questions he asked, real questions, engaged questions, that made a young woman feel, for the first time in a room like that one, like the most important person in it. Elena felt something shift in her chest. Not jealousy, not rage, recognition. He is going to take everything from her, Elena thought, with a clarity so cold it felt like ice water. And she will let him, because he is making her feel exactly the way he made me feel in that conference room in Lisbon 22 years ago. She sat quietly for the rest of the meeting. But Elena Vasquez, the woman who had always noticed everything, had already made her decision. Before we continue this story, I want to say something. I spent a long time with this one, not just writing it, but sitting with it. Because this isn't just a story. It's a pattern that too many women will recognize. If you believe that truth matters, that credit belongs to the people who earned it, and that one act of courage can protect someone who doesn't yet know they need protecting, subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means everything to me. Now let's keep going. Have you ever stayed silent about something important because you told yourself the moment wasn't right, and then the moment never came? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Elena did not approach Amara immediately. That was not how Elena operated. She had spent 22 years in rooms full of powerful people, and she had learned, the hard way, through painful experience, that the most dangerous thing a woman in her position could do was move too quickly. Victor noticed everything. He had built an empire partly on his ability to read people, to sense shifts in loyalty or intention before they fully formed. So Elena waited. She watched. Over the following 2 weeks, she observed Amara the way she had once observed broken business models, with patient, methodical attention, looking for the shape of what was really happening beneath the surface of what was visible. What she saw made her chest ache. Amara Osei was extraordinary, not in the way that word gets used carelessly, not merely talented or impressive or promising. Elena had been around enough genuinely gifted people to know the difference between someone who was good and someone who was operating on a different frequency entirely. Amara was operating on a different frequency entirely. Her algorithm, the one she had presented in that first meeting, was elegant in a way that reminded Elena viscerally of her own early work. It solved the data processing problem that Harrington Technologies had been throwing resources at for 3 years, and it solved it not with brute force or expensive infrastructure, but with a structural insight so clean and unexpected that Elena had to read it twice to fully appreciate what she was looking at. This is what I looked like at 24, Elena thought, sitting alone in her private study one evening with Amara's technical summary open on her laptop. This is exactly what I looked like. Brilliant. Hungry. Completely unprotected. She also noticed the other things. The way Victor had quietly restructured Amara's reporting line so that she now reported directly to him rather than to her department head. The way Amara had been moved to a private office, a privilege framed as recognition, but which effectively isolated her from her peers and her natural support network. The way Victor had begun casually referring to our new approach to data architecture in board communications, without attribution, in the gentle, habitual way of a man who had been doing this for so long it no longer required conscious thought. Elena had been that woman. She knew every single step of this choreography. She picked up her phone and made the first of what would become many quiet, careful calls. The first person she called was a woman named Dr. Billionaire, a systems architect who had worked with Victor in the early years of the company, before Elena had even come into the picture. They had met twice at events over the years, always briefly, always in rooms too crowded for real conversation. Elena had sensed something in Priya's eyes at those meetings, a recognition, a wariness, that she had filed away without fully examining. Priya answered on the second ring. Elena, she said, not surprised, almost as if she had been waiting. I need to ask you something, Elena said. And I need you to know that whatever you tell me stays with me until I understand the full picture. A pause. Ask, Priya said. The conversation lasted 2 hours. By the end of it, Elena had the first piece of something she had not had in 22 years. Evidence. But evidence alone was not enough. Elena understood this with the same analytical clarity she brought to everything. A private grievance, however well documented, was just a story. Stories needed witnesses. They needed context. They needed, most importantly, the courage of the person at the center of them. And that meant she needed to talk to Amara. She chose a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the board meeting. She knew Victor would be in Zurich until Thursday. She knew Amara arrived at the office early. She had noticed this detail without meaning to, the way she noticed everything. Usually by 7:15, a full hour before most of the team. Elena arrived at 7. She found Amara in the small kitchen on the 14th floor, both hands wrapped around a coffee mug, staring out at the Geneva skyline with the expression of someone carrying something heavy and getting used to its weight. She looked up when Elena entered, immediately straightened. The instinctive performance of someone who had learned to be careful around powerful people. Mrs. Harrington, she said. I didn't know you'd be in today. I'm not, officially, Elena said. She poured herself a coffee, leaned against the counter. How are you settling in, Amara? Very well, thank you. Automatic. Polished. Elena looked at her directly. That's not what I asked. A beat of silence. Amara's eyes searched Elena's face. Looking, Elena understood, for the angle, for what this woman wanted from her. Because in Amara's experience, when powerful people asked personal questions, there was always an angle. It's an adjustment, Amara said carefully. It's a big environment. You've been moved off your team, Elena said. Quietly, not a question. Something flickered across Amara's face. Mr. Harrington felt the direct reporting structure would allow for. Amara. Elena's voice was gentle, completely steady. I'm not asking you to evaluate the decision. I'm asking how it feels. The question landed differently than Amara expected. Elena could see it, the slight softening, the micro-expression of someone unexpectedly offered something real in a place built entirely on performance. Isolating, Amara said, after a moment. So quietly, it was almost to herself. Elena nodded. Yes, she said. It is. They stood in silence for a moment, both looking out at the city. Then Elena said, I'd like to show you something. Not here. Somewhere we can actually talk. She reached into her bag and placed a simple card on the counter. A personal card, not a Harrington Company card, with just her name and a private number. There's no obligation. No agenda I'm going to hide from you. But I think there are things you should know before this goes further. Amara looked at the card, looked at Elena. Why? She asked. Direct. Unguarded, for the first time. It was such an honest question that Elena felt it somewhere behind her sternum. Because, Elena said, 22 years ago, I was sitting exactly where you are. And I wish, more than almost anything, that someone had walked into a kitchen and handed me a card. She picked up her coffee, gave Amara a small, real smile, not the practiced Gala smile, but something older and quieter. Take your time, she said, and she walked out. Amara called 3 days later. They met at a small cafe in the Os Vives neighborhood, far from Harrington's offices, far from anyone who might recognize either of them. Elena arrived first and chose a corner table. When Amara walked in, still visibly uncertain, still measuring the room for danger, Elena stood and said simply, "Thank you for coming." Those 4 words, the straightforwardness of them, the absence of performance, seemed to do something to Amara's posture. She sat down. She wrapped her hands around her coffee, and slowly, carefully, like a woman testing ice before trusting her weight to it, she began to talk. She talked about the algorithm, about how the conversations with Victor had begun, collaborative, exciting, electric with possibility, about how her ideas had started appearing in his presentations with the edges smoothed off, reframed, attributed to the team or our current development thinking, about the moment she had tried, gently, to clarify her contribution in a meeting, and Victor had smiled at her with perfect warmth and said, "Amara is being modest. We developed this approach together." And the entire room had nodded, and she had sat there feeling something she couldn't name. "Erased," Elena said softly. Amara looked up. "That's the word," Elena said. "What you're feeling. It's erasure. And it is not in your imagination." She reached into her bag and placed a thin folder on the table. "I need you to read this," she said. "Take whatever time you need. And then I need to tell you about a woman named Priya, and a few others." She paused. "Because you are not the first. And unless something changes, you will not be the last." Amara looked at the folder. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes, when they came back up to Elena's, were clear and steady and lit with something that had not been there before. Not just understanding. Resolve. What would you do if someone finally told you the truth you'd been sensing but couldn't prove? What would you do with that knowledge? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below. And if this story is pulling you in, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Have you ever sensed that something was wrong in a situation, at work, in a relationship, anywhere, before you had the proof? How did you handle it? Tell me below. Every comment matters. The folder contained 17 documents. Amara read them over 2 days. She read them at home, alone, after midnight when the apartment was quiet and there was no performance required of her. No careful smile, no measured language, no monitoring of her own reactions in real time. She read Dr. Billionaire'S account, a detailed, precise, chronological record of the 18 months Priya had spent as a lead architect on what became Harrington Technologies' first major product, the contribution that had launched the empire, the ideas that had come from her, the meetings where Victor had presented them as his own, the moment she had confronted him privately, and the quiet, efficient way the company had restructured her role until she had no choice but to leave. She read the account of a woman named Sujin Park, a Korean-American data scientist who had spent 3 years in Victor's orbit a decade ago. Same pattern, different details, same ending. She read 2 others. Brief, devastating, consistent. And then she sat in the dark of her apartment in Geneva, a city she had moved to alone at 24, because she believed in what she was building. And she felt something move through her that was not quite anger and not quite grief, but lived precisely in the place where those 2 things meet. She picked up her phone and called Elena. "I finished reading," she said. "I know this is a lot," Elena said. "It's a pattern," Amara said. Her voice was very steady. "It's not mistakes. It's not oversight. It's a system." "Yes," Elena said. "It is." A silence. "What do we do?" Amara asked. What they did, over the following 6 weeks, was build something. They met twice a week, always in different locations, always away from anything connected to Victor or the company. A cafe in Carouge, a park bench near the lake on a gray Wednesday morning. Once, memorably, a back corner table at a Lebanese restaurant where the owner recognized Elena and spent 20 minutes bringing them unrequested food, which they ate gratefully while spreading documents across the table between the plates. Elena had spent 22 years being careful. She brought that carefulness to everything they did. She knew how Victor thought. She knew his legal team. She had sat in enough rooms with them to understand their strategies, their pressure points, the specific language they used to make problems disappear. She had spent 2 decades watching how power protects itself. Now she used that knowledge differently. She contacted a lawyer, not a Harrington lawyer, not anyone connected to the firm's ecosystem. A woman named Isabelle Moreau, based in Paris, who specialized in intellectual property and corporate whistleblower cases, and whose reputation Elena had quietly researched over the course of a week before making the call. Isabelle listened to everything without interruption. When Elena finished, there was a pause. "How much documentation do you have?" Isabelle asked. "Enough to begin," Elena said. "More coming. And the other women, are they willing to go on record?" "That," Elena said, "is what I'm working on." Priya was the first. Elena had expected this to be the hardest conversation. Priya had rebuilt her life carefully after leaving Harrington Technologies, a respected position at a university research institute, a quiet existence, a hard-won peace with what had happened. Asking her to step back into it was asking her to risk that peace. She asked anyway. They met in person, in Zurich, at a hotel near the train station. Priya was 51 now, elegant and precise, with the particular composure of someone who had processed a great deal of pain and come out the other side of it with her dignity intact. She listened to Elena lay out the full picture. Amara, the other women, Isabelle, the Gala. When Elena finished, Priya was quiet for a long moment. "I told myself," Priya said finally, "that it was enough to just survive it. To get out and build something else and not look back." She looked down at her hands. "But I think I always knew that wasn't really enough. Because he was still doing it. And I was just not watching." She looked up. "What do you need from me?" she asked. Sujin was harder. She had moved back to Seoul after her experience with Victor, rebuilt a career there, and had spent a decade making herself deliberately unreachable by anything connected to that period of her life. When Elena's carefully worded letter arrived, sent through a mutual contact, with no Harrington letterhead, nothing that would trigger alarm, Sujin did not respond for 11 days. On the 12th day, Elena's private phone rang. "I don't want my name on anything public," Sujin said. "No greeting. Straight to the terms." "I understand," Elena said. "I have a family now. A position. I can't," her voice tightened. "I can't be the story. I can't be the woman this happened to. Not publicly." "Then tell me what you can give me," Elena said. "Because whatever it is, it matters. You matter. And I will protect you to the absolute limit of what's possible." Another long silence. "I kept everything," Sujin said quietly. "Every email. Every draft. Every version of the work with timestamps. I kept it because I didn't know why I was keeping it. I just couldn't delete it." Elena closed her eyes briefly. "Can you send it to my lawyer?" A pause that lasted long enough that Elena began to prepare herself for no. "Yes," Sujin said. Meanwhile, Victor noticed nothing. This was, Elena reflected, perhaps the most revealing thing about him. After 22 years of marriage to a woman who noticed everything, he had never once developed the corresponding skill. He moved through their shared life with the serene confidence of a man who had never had reason to look behind him, because behind him, always, Elena had been managing everything he couldn't see. He was charming at dinner, attentive, in the superficial way she had long since learned to recognize as performance. He spoke with excitement about the gala, the attendee list, the keynote he was preparing, the announcement he planned to make about a new philanthropic initiative that would, he said, cement the Harrington legacy for another generation. "You should say something this year," he told her one evening, with the casual generosity of a man offering table scraps. "A few words about the foundation. You're so good with people, Elena. They love you." Elena looked at him across the dinner table. "I was thinking the same thing," she said. 3 weeks before the gala, something happened that Elena had not planned for. Amara came to their scheduled meeting looking different. Not frightened. Amara was not. Elena had learned, easily frightened, but shaken in a specific way that Elena recognized as the particular shock of having your private suspicions confirmed in a new and concrete form. She set her phone on the table between them and played a voice memo. It was Victor, recorded without his knowledge during what he had believed was a private call, a call in which he spoke to an unnamed colleague about the OSE situation and how to manage the attribution going forward once the algorithm was fully integrated into the company's systems. His voice was calm, professional, almost bored. "She's talented but inexperienced," he said on the recording. "She doesn't know how these things work yet. By the time she does, it'll be too late to untangle." Amara stopped the recording. The cafe was very quiet around them. "He doesn't know I have this," Amara said. Elena looked at the phone, then at Amara. A complicated mixture of emotions moved through her. Fury, yes, but also something that felt almost like relief. Because this was no longer a pattern documented in paperwork and recollection. This was his voice. This was him. She reached across the table and placed her hand briefly over Amara's. "Send that to Isabel today," she said. "And Amara," she paused. "You did something very brave." "I did something very angry," Amara said. Elena smiled, small, real, and warm. "Sometimes," she said, "those are exactly the same thing." But courage, Elena knew, was not protection. 2 days later, Victor restructured Amara's contract. New terms. An intellectual property clause that had not been there before, written in the kind of dense, layered legal language designed to look routine while functionally signing away any claim Amara might make to her own work, past or future. Victor's assistant sent it over on a Friday afternoon, with a note describing it as *standard updated terms for senior technical contributors. Amara forwarded it to Isabel within the hour. Isabel called Elena that evening. "He knows something is shifting," she said. "He doesn't know what, but he's getting protective." "How much time do we have?" Elena asked. "Before the gala?" "Yes." A pause. "Enough," Isabel said. "If we move carefully." "But Elena, once this starts, it doesn't stop. You understand that." Elena stood at the window of her private study, looking out at the Geneva night, the lights on the lake, the dark shapes of the Alps beyond. The city where she had come as a young woman full of ideas and trust, and the absolute conviction that the work itself would be enough. "I've been stopped for 22 years, she said quietly. "I'm not interested in stopping again." "Have you ever been in a situation where doing the right thing meant risking everything you'd built? Where the cost of speaking felt higher than the cost of staying silent? I want to hear from you. Share your experience in the comments. This community is full of people who understand exactly what that feels like. Have you ever had to overcome a major obstacle to protect someone you cared about? At work? In your family? Anywhere in your life? What gave you the strength to keep going? Tell me below. The night of the gala arrived the way significant nights always do, quietly, without fanfare, looking from the outside like any other evening until it wasn't. Elena dressed alone. She had dismissed her usual stylist 3 days earlier, telling her simply that she would manage tonight herself. The gown she had chosen was not the one Victor had suggested, the pale gold he liked, the one that photographed beautifully and made her look, as he always said, perfectly elegant. She had chosen instead a deep burgundy, structured, commanding, the color of someone who had made a decision and was not reconsidering it. She sat at her mirror and did her own makeup with the same methodical attention she brought to everything. She was 50 years old. She looked it, and she had stopped minding. The face looking back at her was not the face of the woman in the magazine photographs, softened, lit carefully, arranged into pleasant approachability. It was sharper than that, more itself. She put on her grandmother's earrings, small, plain gold hoops that Dona Lucia had passed to her mother, and her mother had pressed into her hand the morning Elena left Lisbon for the last time. She had never worn them to a Harrington event before. Victor preferred the diamonds. Tonight, she wore the gold. The Harrington annual charity gala was held at the Grand Palais Lehman, a venue of extraordinary, almost aggressive beauty, built on the edge of Lake Geneva with floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the Alps and the water into a living backdrop for whatever human drama unfolded inside. 600 guests, heads of state, captains of industry, journalists from 4 continents. The kind of room where reputations were made and unmade over the course of a single evening, where the social architecture was as carefully constructed as any building, and where everyone understood instinctively that they were both audience and participant in something larger than themselves. Victor was already working the room when Elena arrived. She saw him from the entrance, moving through the crowd with his particular brand of effortless authority, laughing at the right moments, leaning in with practiced intimacy, commanding every circle he entered. He was magnificent at this. She had always acknowledged that, even at her most privately furious. Victor Harrington knew how to make a room feel like it belonged to him. He spotted her across the space and smiled. The warm, public smile he reserved for moments when they were being observed. She smiled back. Neither smile reached anywhere near their eyes. Amara was there. Elena had not told Victor she had arranged Amara's invitation. She had done it quietly, through the Foundation's guest coordinator, listed as a representative of Harrington Technologies' technical development team. Amara stood near the far edge of the room in a simple black dress, speaking to no one, watching everything. When their eyes met across the ballroom, Amara gave one small, steady nod. Elena nodded back. Priya was there too, seated at a guest table near the center of the room, invited, officially, as a distinguished academic guest of the Harrington Foundation. She had cut her hair since Zurich. She looked, Elena thought, like a woman who had decided something. Isabel Moreau was at a table near the exit. She was not there officially in any legal capacity. She was there as Elena's guest. She had a small leather folder on her lap that contained, among other things, a cease and desist letter, a formal intellectual property claim, and a prepared statement for the press that would go out at exactly the moment Elena finished speaking, not before and not after. The timing mattered. Elena had been precise about the timing. The evening moved through its choreography. Dinner, speeches from 2 government ministers, a video presentation about the Harrington Foundation's philanthropic work over the past year, hospitals in 3 countries, university scholarships, clean water initiatives. All of it real. All of it funded by money generated by work that had begun in Elena's mind, at a second-hand desk in Lisbon, at 2 in the morning, surrounded by economic modeling she had rewritten 4 times. She sat beside Victor through all of it, listened to him lean over twice to murmur comments in her ear, once about a minister he found tiresome, once about the salmon, which he said was overdone. She responded appropriately. She lifted her wine glass at the right moments. She was, to all external observation, exactly what she had always been at these events. Perfectly elegant. Victor's keynote was scheduled for 9:15. At 9:10, Elena leaned toward him and said, very quietly, "I'd like to say a few words tonight. Before your keynote. I mentioned it to the event coordinator. She's arranged it." Victor looked at her with mild surprise. "You want to speak?" "Just briefly," Elena said. "The foundation work. You said yourself I'm good with people." He studied her for a moment. And here was the thing about Victor, the thing that had perhaps always been true. He was perceptive about strangers and completely blind to her. 22 years of Elena being exactly what he needed her to be had made him constitutionally incapable of imagining she could be anything else. "Of course," he said warmly. "That's a lovely idea." The event coordinator introduced her simply. Elena Harrington, co-founder of the Harrington Foundation. Elena walked to the podium. 600 people looked at her with the polite, patient attention reserved for the wives of powerful men, present, pleasant, not expected to surprise anyone. She adjusted the microphone, looked out at the room, found Amara's face, found Priya's, found Isabel's. Then she looked at Victor, seated at the head table, watching her with a proud and proprietary smile. She took a breath, and she began. 22 years ago, she said, a man walked into a conference room in Lisbon with a failing company and a brilliant pitch. And a woman, a working-class girl from Moravia who had fought 3 years for a scholarship and spent every night since trying to prove it was deserved, told him his model had a fundamental flaw. The room was quiet, attentive, not yet understanding. She fixed the flaw, Elena continued. And then she fixed the architecture, and then the monetization model, and the international expansion framework, and the algorithm that sits, to this day, at the core of everything Harrington Technologies does. A shift in the room. Small, like a current changing direction underwater. She worked without a title, Elena said. Without a contract. She worked because she believed in what they were building together. And then the world arrived, and the man stepped forward, and the woman stepped back. And she told herself it was temporary. She paused. "My name is Elena Vasquez Harrington, and I am that woman." The silence that followed was the particular silence of 600 people simultaneously recalibrating. Elena did not rush to fill it. She had waited 22 years. She could wait 10 seconds. "I am not here tonight to burn anything down," she said. "I am here because 3 months ago I met a young woman named Amara Osei, a software engineer of extraordinary talent who had been quietly recruited, isolated, and positioned to have her work absorbed into this company's architecture without credit, without acknowledgement, and without recourse." She paused, exactly as mine was. And I would not, watch it happen again. She reached beneath the podium and produced a bound document. Isabel had prepared it, clean and precise. She held it up. "This contains the documented intellectual property contributions of 5 women across the 22-year history of Harrington Technologies. Original work. Timestamped. Verified. It has been filed today with the relevant legal authorities in Switzerland, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Copies have been provided to the press. She set it down. Victor, she said, looking directly at her husband for the first time since she had begun speaking, built a great many things. His charisma is real. His ability to attract talent is real. His gift for standing in front of a room and making people believe in a vision, that is genuinely real. She held his gaze. But the vision itself? The architecture underneath it? The engine that actually runs? That was never his alone. And it is time, it is past time, for the people who built it to be seen. She turned back to the room. Amara Osei's algorithm will be formally credited to her, effective immediately, as a condition of the legal filing. Billionaire, who is in this room tonight, will receive formal recognition for her foundational contributions to this company's first product. She listed the others. Each name, each contribution, each year. Clear and factual and impossible to dismiss. Then she stepped back from the microphone. I am not asking for applause, she said simply. I am asking for something harder than applause. I am asking everyone in this room, everyone who holds power, who makes decisions about whose name goes on whose work, to think, tonight, about who is standing slightly behind you and to the left, and to ask yourself how long they have been there, and whether they have ever been properly seen. She stepped away from the podium. The room remained silent for 3 full seconds. And then, not from the head table, where Victor sat absolutely still with an expression Elena had never seen on his face before, but from somewhere near the center of the room, a single person began to applaud. Then another. Then another. By the time Elena reached her seat, the ballroom was on its feet. She did not look at Victor. She looked instead across the room to where Amara was standing, and she saw something on that young woman's face that she had not seen there before, in all the careful weeks of meetings and documents and strategy and fear. She saw relief. The specific, physical relief of a person who has been carrying something alone and has just, finally, unexpectedly, in the last place they anticipated, been joined. Elena sat down, folded her hands in her lap, and allowed herself, for the first time and longer than she could precisely remember, to simply breathe. The weeks that followed moved quickly. Isabel's filings triggered a formal investigation by Swiss corporate regulators. 3 major institutional investors requested emergency briefings. 2 board members, independently, within 48 hours of the gala, contacted Elena's legal team to discuss cooperation. Victor's lawyers issued a statement describing the claims as without merit and motivated by personal grievance. It was, Isabel told Elena over the phone with professional satisfaction, precisely the wrong thing to say, as it confirmed the dispute was real and invited further press scrutiny. Amara's algorithm was credited to her within 10 days. Her contract was voided and renegotiated, this time with Isabel present, this time with terms that were unambiguous. She was offered, and accepted, a senior position at a competing firm that had watched the Gala story break and made a call within 24 hours. Priya gave one interview, measured, factual, and so precise in its detail that it was republished in 7 languages. She did not perform anger. She simply described what had happened, clearly and completely, and trusted the facts to do what facts do when they are finally allowed into the light. Sujin remained private, as Elena had promised. Her documentation was part of the legal record, attributed in filings, but not in press. She sent Elena a single message, 3 weeks after the gala. Thank you. I didn't know how much I needed someone to carry this with me until someone did. Elena read it 3 times. 6 months later, Elena Harrington, she kept the name, because it was hers too, because she had built what it represented, because she was done with erasure in all its forms, announced the establishment of the Vasquez Foundation. Its mandate was specific, to identify, fund, and legally protect women in technology and innovation whose intellectual contributions were at risk of being absorbed, misattributed, or lost. Named, explicitly, for her mother. For the seamstress from Moraria with the precise and gifted hands, who had taught her daughter, without ever using these words, that the work you do with care and intelligence belongs to you, and that belonging to you means something, regardless of who tries to take it. The Foundation's first grant recipient was Amara Osei. At the announcement event, small, deliberately, nothing like a gala, Amara spoke briefly. She was not a natural public speaker in the way Victor was. She was better than that. She was specific and honest and slightly nervous in a way that made every person in the room lean forward. I almost didn't come to Geneva, she said. I almost turned the job down because something felt off. About the offer. About the structure of it. She paused. I wish I had trusted that feeling sooner. But I'm glad I was here. Because here is where I met someone who walked into a kitchen at 7 in the morning and told me the truth when she didn't have to. And that one thing. She stopped, collected herself. That one thing changed everything. She looked at Elena. Elena looked back at her. And in that exchange, quiet, public, witnessed, something that had been broken for 22 years completed itself. This story is about what happens when one woman decides that someone else's future is worth more than her own silence, and the ripple that decision creates. I'd love to know, what's one thing this story made you think about differently? Leave it in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the moment. There are more stories like this one waiting for you. This story shows how one act of courage can protect someone who doesn't yet know they need protecting. What's one way you could show up for someone in your life this week? At work, at home, in your community? Make a commitment in the comments. Let's hold each other to it. They say Geneva keeps its secrets well. The lake holds its stillness even in storms. The mountains do not move for anyone. The city goes about its business with the composed discretion of a place that has witnessed centuries of powerful people making consequential decisions and has learned not to be surprised by any of it. But even Geneva talked about the night Elena Harrington asked for a microphone. Here is where they are now. Elena moved out of the Harrington penthouse 4 months after the gala and into a modest apartment near the old town. Her choice, deliberate and symbolic. The apartment has large windows, good light, and a desk she bought herself. She works at it most mornings by 6. Not for anyone else. For the Vasquez Foundation, for the women whose files cross her desk each week, for the future she is building with her own name on it this time. She speaks to her mother every Sunday. Dona Lucia, now 78 and still sewing because she says her hands don't know how to rest. Listen to the full story of the gala on a video call the morning after it happened. When Elena finished, her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in Portuguese, I always knew the work was yours. I just waited for you to know it too. Elena did not have words for that. She didn't need them. Amara is thriving. Her algorithm, now formally and publicly credited to her, has been described by 3 independent technology publications as one of the most elegant data processing solutions developed in the past decade. She leads her own small team at her new firm. She is 25 years old. She has, by her own account, only just begun. She mentors 2 junior engineers, both women, both early in their careers, both learning from someone who knows firsthand what it costs to go unprotected and what it means to be seen. Priya returned to her research institute after her interview was published and found, to her measured surprise, that the response from colleagues was almost entirely one of respect. The story she had carried privately for years turned out, when told clearly and factually, to be recognized immediately by more people than she had anticipated. Several of them had their own versions. Several of them called her. She is writing a paper, academic, rigorous, the kind of work she has always done best, on systemic patterns of intellectual property misattribution in the technology sector. She has dedicated it, in the acknowledgments, to Elena, and to every woman who kept the receipts. Victor is navigating the legal proceedings with a team of lawyers and a public relations strategy that has, so far, not succeeded in changing the essential story. He has said little publicly. Those who know him say he is diminished in the specific way of people who have spent decades believing their own mythology and are now required, for the first time, to confront the distance between the myth and the truth. History will decide what to do with him. Elena has stopped spending her energy on that question. And what about you? You have just spent 50 minutes with a story about a woman who waited 22 years to speak, and about what happened when she finally did. About the young woman she protected. About the truth that had been sitting in the dark, patient and factual, waiting for someone to carry it into the light. Every single day, in offices and boardrooms and creative spaces and kitchens and classrooms all over the world, there are people doing extraordinary work that is going unseen. There are people sensing that something is wrong but lacking the language or the proof or the courage, or simply the company of someone who has been there before, to say so. You may be one of them. Or you may be someone who has the power to walk into a kitchen at 7 in the morning and hand someone a card. To say, I see what is happening. You are not imagining it. And you are not alone. Both of those things matter. Both of those things change lives. Elena did not stand at that podium and speak for herself alone. She spoke for Amara, who still had time. She spoke for Priya and Sujin, who had been carrying their silence for years. She spoke for every woman who had ever stepped back and to the left and told herself it was temporary. And in doing so, in choosing, at 50 years old, to spend her own silence in service of someone else's future, she became, finally and completely, herself. That is what kindness at its deepest looks like. Not the easy gesture, not the comfortable donation, but the decision to use everything you have, your knowledge, your position, your hard-won understanding of exactly how power operates, in service of someone who needs it more than you need your own quiet. It costs something. Real kindness always does. But look at what it builds. If this story moved you, if any part of Elena's journey, or Amara's, or Priya's, stayed with you, please like this video. It takes 1 second, and it helps this story reach someone who may need it today. Subscribe for more stories like this one. Stories about ordinary and extraordinary courage. About the moments people choose truth over comfort. About what happens when kindness is not passive but active and brave. And most importantly, look around you this week. Look for the person who is doing the work and not getting the credit. Look for the young woman in the corner of the room who is sensing something she cannot yet name. Be the person who walks in at 7 in the morning. Be the person who hands over the card. You have that power. Use it. What act of courage or kindness will you carry into your week? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you for watching. And remember, the world changes one moment of courage at a time. Which character in this story did you connect with most? Elena, Amara, or Priya? And what is one thing you are taking away from this story into your own life? Share it below. This community sees you.